Hey, welcome back to my channel. This is Lies and Logic. My name is Matt Garrett. Today, December 12th, Wednesday. I'm sure most of you heard yesterday the Bank of Canada made a major announcement dropping the interest rates by 50 basis points again, which is being touted as a positive by the Liberal government. I don't think most people quite understand how the central banks work. So anyway, we're going to have a listen to this video from Tiff Macklem, I believe he's the head of the Bank of Canada. And let's just have a listen to this announcement, and I'll break it down for you guys afterwards the best I can.
Today, we lowered the policy interest rate by 50 basis points. This is our fifth consecutive decrease since June and brings our policy rate to 3.25%. Canada's economy grew by 1% in the third quarter, which was slower than we expected. Recent data also suggests growth will be lower than projected in the final quarter of this year. Canada's job market is still softening. Businesses have continued hiring, but the number of people looking for work has been increasing faster than the number of jobs. The unemployment rate rose to 6.8% in November. It has been especially hard for young people and newcomers to Canada to find work. While the upward and downward pressures on prices have been moderating, risks to the inflation outlook remain. Elevated wage increases combined with weak productivity could push inflation up. Or the economy could keep growing below its potential, which would pull inflation down. In addition, the economic outlook is clouded by the possibility of new tariffs on Canadian exports to the United States. No one knows how this will play out in the months ahead, whether tariffs will be imposed, what exemptions get agreed, or whether retaliatory measures will be taken. This is a major new uncertainty. To summarize, inflation is back to the 2% target, and lower interest rates are beginning to pass through to stronger spending by households. But the economy remains in excess supply, and the growth outlook now appears softer than we projected in October. Going forward, we will be evaluating the need for further reductions in the policy rate, one decision at a time. In other words, with the policy rate now substantially lower, we anticipate a more gradual approach to monetary policy if the economy evolves broadly as expected. The bank is committed to maintaining price stability for Canadians and keeping inflation close to the 2% target.
Okay. Well, here's the thing. Central banking and how all of that works is confusing, to say the least. You can understand it and try and break it down, but it's so nuanced that even when you're trying to study it, it sounds like and reads like regurgitated stuff from some university professor who probably doesn't understand it himself. And the reality is that Canada was forced to increase the interest rates due to the massive influx of funds into our economy during COVID. They influxed over $420 billion into our economy, which, if you understand, when you do that, you're dividing how much our dollar is worth. So it's like if you were a kid and you were to take a pizza to school and you were to chop that pizza up into 4 slices, well, it's going to have greater trade value with those 4 slices. You say, hey, I'll give you 1 slice for your lunch, and well, that makes sense. Now, you chop that up into 8 slices. Now you have 1 slice that's not as large as it was before. So now it weakens the trade value of your slice of pizza. That's exactly what happened with our dollar. So, in turn, it started a ripple effect through trade. We would try to import, and we would have to use more money to buy things, which in turn force things to eventually catch up and prices continue to increase. The interest rates go up in order to attract foreign investment. Foreign investment into the Bank of Canada only starts to look appealing when the interest rates are up because it has a greater return. Bank of Canada doesn't return very much money in general to those that invest in it. So that's why the people that invest have massive amounts of money to invest. The larger amount of money, the greater the return. Just like anything, I mean, it's pretty straightforward. So by lowering the interest rates, you are going to create panic within the foreign investment market, which means foreign investors are going to start pulling their money out, which is going to create an unstable, potentially risky looking economy for us, which will eventually drive housing prices up as people start to get back into the market thinking that the time is now. So it may look good to some because there is some good news. You know, the good is people who have variable rate mortgages are going to see some savings immediately. And then there's also potentially people who want to sell their homes who are going to potentially see a higher value of their home as the demand for purchasing and borrowing goes up. Now, what this is also going to create is potentially more fractured reserve banking. More banks are going to have the ability to borrow more money, especially with these new rules that are going to be implemented on the 15th, where one person can now not just borrow $1 million for a home, they can borrow 1.5, dragging their home loan from 25 years to 30 years amortization. Now that may again sound great, but in the long run, you're paying more and it's costing you more. But this is not something that's going to make our economy more stable. Now, when central banks, Bank of Canada included, began, they were reliant on what was called the gold standard. And the gold standard was reliant on how much money and how much gold you had in your reserve. And that meant they could loan out money based on that, and that was it. And then eventually we created and have the fracture reserve banking system, which is what created the 2008 housing crisis. We all know that. We have evolved this system to the point now where it's so muddled and hard to read and understand. And I mean, it's built this way so that corrupt people can get rich. The United States is the only central bank that has a private sector that nobody's really allowed to know much about, which is why Bernie Sanders didn't get in, because he wanted to audit the Federal Reserve. And people did not like that. They didn't like the idea of auditing and exposing the criminals, hence why, the Epstein list hasn't been released. And the Bank of Canada is definitely more transparent than the Federal Reserve. And since it's more transparent, we can understand it a little bit better. The risks here, in my opinion, far outweigh the benefits. It's a pretty scary thing when you expect the dollar right now, which is already at 70 compared to the US. If it drops any lower, which it has been lower before, if it continues to go lower, that's going to, again, weaken our trade value. With tariffs coming, that's not a good thing. With the potential of tariffs and our dollar being weak, this is not a good thing. Really, what needs to take place is the government of Canada just needs to do what Trump suggests and strengthen our borders. Instead of trying to find dental and money to give everybody else and save the world and Ukraine and Syria and all these things. This is why Chrystia Freeland and Trudeau have been hiding the finance report, because they know that with everything going on, this is not a good look. And again, it all just fits into the WEF, their agenda and their plan to continue to bankrupt Canada. I mean, Trudeau is just, and Jagmeet have both recently referred to themselves as global citizens, which should be infuriating to Canadians who can't afford to feed their families at the moment and are lining up at food banks, and major cities who have tent cities in every corner of town. This is not a good thing. This is not a good thing. I know it's really hard to understand. I implore everybody to go and take a look and Google how central banks work for themselves. Again, it is very hard to understand, and they make it that way on purpose. I hope I did my best. Like I said, it's very difficult to try and put it into words, but the bottom line is, by dropping the rates, you're going to create a fear of investing in Canada. High interest rates create confidence in returns. So eventually, the dollar will continue to strengthen with higher interest rates. But you have all these liberals, Justin Trudeau included, who has reported the Bank of Canada cuts key interest rate to 3.25. And he thinks this is a good thing. And he's trying to report it as a good thing. And he doesn't understand banking in any capacity whatsoever. And maybe he does. But if he does, he's doing this to destroy us. Don't think for a second that this is something that they're doing for the best interest of Canadians. They're doing this, to continue to hide the reality of the situation, which is what they've been doing for the last 2 years. People like myself and others have known that we have been in a recession for a long time. You don't influx $425 billion, which is the largest amount of money ever influxed into the Canadian system in history. You don't do that without consequences. That's like taking your pizza to school that you used to get on Mondays, every Monday for pizza day from your parents. Take it to school and you would, cut it into 4 slices and get all your fun toys and treats and stuff. It's like taking it to school and dividing it into 20 slices and saying, hey guys, I got 1 slice for you. Remember what you gave me last week for that 1 slice? It doesn't work that way. Okay. Now our dollar is going to be so weak that it's going to really impact the tariffs. And all we can do now is hope that somebody does something to comply with Trump's, which are very reasonable requests to protect his borders. This benefits Canada and the United States mutually. But these globalists don't really care, do they? The Bank of Canada runs independently from the government and only responds to economic signals in our economy. PP has no clue on how government works. I don't think this guy knows how government works. Let's have a listen to this video here. Trudeau and Pierre going at it again.
Have confidence in him, nor does his own party or his own cabinet, nor apparently does the Bank of Canada, which today was forced into an emergency panicked rate cut to confront.
What are they laughing at? These people are fucking idiots. Laughing?
The collapsing economy. The governor of the bank said the economy is softer than he expected it would be, and despite the fact that inflation is rising, that all 4 measures of it are above the target, he's being forced to cut the rates to save the economy from outright collapse. When will the Prime Minister stop breaking the economy and call a carbon tax election so we can fix it?
Again, I'm going to ask members not to take the floor unless recognized by the chair. The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
This is completely illogical.
Say that in English. The reality is, Mr. Speaker, he's just making this stuff up in a way you couldn't believe. Inflation has been within the target range of the Bank of Canada for over 10 months now. This is because we have been there to help Canadians with things like dental care, like a school food program, with investments that are growing the economy in a way that has brought down inflation and allowed the Bank of Canada to cut rates faster than just about any other G7 country. We are there for Canadians. He's the one voting against things.
Housing prices are going to go up now that these rates have dropped. People don't look into how central banking works. Now you're going to have a surge of business, and this is how they are going to disguise the recession, by creating some economic stimulation through the housing market, which is our prime source of GDP. It's so hard to continue to listen to these people who don't really care about our country and don't really care about Canadians, because you have, Trudeau yesterday trying to make this about progress. They don't care about helping Canadians feed their families and pay their bills. They care about progress. Let's hear Trudeau, who refers to himself still as a feminist. I'm a feminist. Yay. Here's Justin Trudeau speaking about last month's election.
Now, it shouldn't be that way. It wasn't supposed to be that way. We were supposed to be on a steady, if difficult sometimes, march towards progress. And yet, just a few weeks ago, the United States voted for a second time to not elect its first woman president. Everywhere, women's rights and women's progress is under attack, overtly and subtly. But I want you to know that I am, and always will be, a proud feminist. You will always have an ally in me and in my government.
Now let's unpack that for a second. In what capacity do women not have any rights? I'm so confused because all the women I know are very successful. All the women I know have all the rights in the world, equal to men. They could become a police officer. They can join the military. They could work an oil rig if they want. They can dig ditches. They can do all the hard, tough jobs that they want. So why is it that women still choose the same jobs they chose 100 years ago? Could it potentially be because we are, on some level, different? This guy has no concept or understanding of feminism. Feminism has been accomplished. We accomplished equality. It's done. It's done. Stop fighting for it. And women, I know, most who understand this completely agree. There's really nothing holding up women from our society anymore. Nothing. They can vote. They can go to school. They can not have children. They can have abortions. They can do whatever they want. So why is he still harping on about this? Because he doesn't give a fuck about us. It's just a smoke and mirrors game to continue to sewer our economy and join the WEF's plan to one world government, eliminate borders, create a world bank that has one world currency. You got this guy here who, again, you know, he's trying to make it out. It's about female issues. It's about trying to uplift women in our society. And that's not what this is about. We need to feed people.
I've been listening patiently during this entire question period, and I've heard a lot of attacks of the Minister of Finance. I'll tell you why we support that incredible female leader. Because what does she do? She empowers women around this country. How does she do that? She puts in place programs like a Canada Child Care program.
So it's smoke and mirrors, right? Just like Obama was smoke and mirrors. Put a black person in power who's well-spoken, and you get everybody who thinks, oh, we've accomplished peace. Now we don't have to keep watching our government. Meanwhile, Obama bombed 9 countries' entire administration, killing more men, women, and children than any president in history. He's a complete and total warmonger. And now Canada is trying to suggest that by having Chrystia Freeland in that position is more important than doing the job well. It's more important to have a woman in that position than it is to have somebody doing the job well. It's insane. If we're going to talk female leaders, it's time to start talking about the Premier of Alberta. Now that's a strong female leader. She's doing what the people are asking. And that's all that matters. You're a public servant. You're elected by the people. Your job is to do the bidding of the people, not the bidding of people outside the country. You're not supposed to think about how to save people outside of your borders. That's why she worries about Alberta. She doesn't care about what happens in Manitoba, British Columbia, or Ontario. Her main focus is Alberta. And just like if a mayor of a city was to think about, say, for example, I live in Victoria. If a mayor of Victoria was to think about the people of Nanaimo, how does that benefit the people of Victoria? It doesn't, right? These people are purposely trying to divide us in order to create a world that has no choice but to unite under one government, which then ultimately leads to the dystopian world that they want to create where, have you ever seen the movie with Matt Damon, Elysium? That's sort of an analogy of our future. Create a world where the elites have everything built perfectly for them, and it's funded by the rats that live on Earth fighting for scraps and using whatever money we have to consume products, just like China. China was the experiment. How can we control a massive population of people? And they've done it. They've got them under their thumb. They can tax them any way they want. They can imprison them any way they want. If they cross the street, if they jaywalk, they have cameras that will catch your face and deduct the money from your bank account right off the bat. They have social credit scoring systems. They are using China as a model for the rest of the world. And these people, that's what they're working for. They don't care about us. They don't care about us. One of these days, I'm going to script a video and I'll break it down better as how the Bank of Canada works. But there are a few videos out there. You just have to search, how do central banks work? Where do central banks get their money? Again, it's very convoluted, and they try to make it very confusing, in my opinion, on purpose. Even some of the videos and the creators out there, you got to wonder, are these people compromised because they often don't share their last names and stuff like that. This is not necessarily what the Liberal Party is trying to make it out to be. So hopefully I'm wrong. Hopefully things don't get as bad as the math is suggesting. But we will have to wait and see.